Hi, this is Stephen Rauer from Martin Valley Community College, and this is part 2 of Chapter 12. I rushed at the end. I didn't get a chance to give sort of an example relative to Martin Valley, but let's see if I can try with the registration system to maybe address some of these items. So one is on campus is where the servers that house our registration system are physically kept. And so the physical security involved in a registration system is there's card access for getting into the room where the servers are kept. There are cameras that are there so they can keep track of who actually goes into the room. So if for some reason something does happen, it's caught on camera what happened. Now, our servers on campus were on a network. And so in terms of the network, there's two aspects of it. There's the hardwired network. So there's the wire someone can just plug into a port in terms of accessing the system. And we have the Wi-Fi that's on campus as well. So securing the network to make sure someone just doesn't come in like into a parking lot and hop onto our Wi-Fi, have access to the system, then that would be an information that would need to be done. In terms of application, now some of this may be unseen to you guys, but Banner, which is the system that we use, there are modules that are enabled and others that aren't. So from an application point of view, there's certain modules that Martin Valley will pay for. And for example, that the registration system and the payroll system are kind of integrated because when it comes to paying adjuncts, you need to know what they're teaching in order to pay them. And so there's certain modules that are turned on. And then also there are some modules that would be only the registrar or people in registration would be able to run those. So that there could be allowing access to parts of the application depending on what someone's role is. The underlying database, well, maybe they don't want me to go into too many details, but in a sense there is an Oracle database behind the scenes. And so one is the security that the database itself has. And then if someone were to get to the server, and the security that the files would have. And that would be sort of an example. So our Oracle database, which is a database is a collection of files, and that would be the security around that. Procedural, if we think of the registration system, think of the process for registering for a class that's closed. And so what the math and computer science department does is they actually will have waiting lists. And so the procedure that they have is that if someone wants to get into a closed class, they have to then enroll, basically sign up for the waiting list, and then so many days before the beginning of the semester, they take the top however many number out of the waiting list and bring them into the class. So there is a procedure that is used in order for overloads into a class, and that involves approval by the chair of the department in order for that to work. And then user security, I mean, if you think of it this way, I can see the class list of the class that I teach. You guys can see that you're in a class. You can't see the other classes I teach. You can't see those rosters. And I can't see my colleagues' rosters. So in terms of some of the security that the registration system has, based on our levels of security is what we can see and what we can't. Now, the chairperson can see all the rosters, so they can see every single person. And just as an aside, me as an advisor for computer science, that they gave me access to student records, so if a student has a question about what class they need to graduate, I can bring up the record and I can look at it, but that's my role as advisor, not my role as teacher of this course. Okay, backing up, one of the things I do want to emphasize this piece first. What sub-organizations will do is, this costs money, they actually will maintain at a different physical location a set of servers that mirrors the set of servers that are being used for the system, and then the data is being synced to those spare servers in real time, so that if abruptly the current system is suddenly unavailable, that other system can become the main system. And so it is costly, because that means you would need two sets of servers. You would actually need another building, which you may have to lease a building from someone else in order to do that. And then that building, you have to have the network infrastructure take place that can handle the traffic that would come in if that now becomes the one that's live. And so there's a whole bunch of costs within that alone. And so this is something that if a company deems their system as being mission critical and there's no downtime allowed, then they may have a hot spare, basically a set of servers that someone can throw a switch and they are alive. But most companies can't afford that. But one thing that companies should do, so regardless of what mechanism is being used to back up, and sometimes back up, and I didn't actually put this here, but the network itself, there could be other drives on the network that they can do the backup to. So not necessarily the same as a hot spare, but just kind of like copying the S drive to the T drive. If those are network drives, copying the data one to the other. That's a very gross example. I mean, anyway, but offsite. So one of the things that a number of companies will make sure they can do is that whatever mechanism they use for backing up, to keep that backup offsite in case the site is unavailable. Let me just jump down here to this disaster recovery. One of the things that should be considered in disaster recovery, what if the site is unavailable? What would happen then? And what a number of companies do look at is, suppose the major road that's near the building where the servers are, suppose there's a chemical spill from a truck that's just driving along and overturns. It has nothing to do with our company. It can be from some other company, and this accident happens and the site is unavailable. Well, if that site is unavailable, what is done? In the case of someone who has a hot spare, they just can turn on the other one. From a corporation point of view, they may tell the people, okay, everyone who's at site X, now go to site Y, and you'll find a desk there for you. But the other thing could be, well, if we do have a set of servers, but we need the data, then somewhere off the site is where there should be a copy of the data, so they can go and then load the system that's going to go live, or the hardware that's going to go live with a copy of the data. So what some organizations will do is that if they have a second site, or they may even rent a storage place, but just keep the data off-site, the backup of the data off-site, so if something happens to the physical site, they can go back and they can get that data. In terms of the types of backups, and the book goes into a whole bunch of different details, and I'll just illustrate here two of them, incremental and full. What some companies will do on a weekly basis, they may do a full backup of the system on a weekly basis. And I'll just say, let's just pretend Saturday night is when the full backup runs. Then what to do is the other days through the week, they just do incrementals. So on Sunday night would be what changes occurred between Saturday night and Sunday night. And then Monday night, what were the changes that occurred between Sunday and Monday? So the idea is, if we completely lose our system and we're restoring from tape, what we might have to do is, let's say it's a Wednesday. Well, if it's a Wednesday, we first do back the full backup that we had from Saturday, and then apply the incrementals from Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday nights, so that we can get back to where we are Wednesday morning. It also means there's the possibility, if that is our backup strategy, that we could lose a day's work. So if it's Wednesday at noon and this occurs, we're resetting back to Wednesday at 8 a.m., or basically Wednesday at midnight. And so whatever work was done that day would be lost. The idea of retaining data, it should match the company policy. So comparing this to Raritan Valley, for example, we're asked to keep exams for, I forget whether it's 2 or 3, because I was good off by 1. But we're supposed to keep final exams for it's 2 or 3 years. Well, if we have servers that have copies or scans of those exams, those should match the retention policy that we have. So if we keep exams for 2 years, we should only keep electronic copies of the exams 2 years as well. So some companies will have specific retention policies. Hopefully I'm not going to violate a non-disclosure agreement by saying this, but what a number of companies will do, if a contract is in place, as long as the contract is in effect, a copy of the contract would be kept electronically as well. So in other words, if there was a contract that was signed in 1947, there should be a copy, not that there would have been an electronic one back in 47, but if that contract is still in effect, then they should have that kept as well. So sometimes the retention, and actually sometimes retention is in perpetuity. The SEC may ask a corporation to reproduce the books they had from a long time ago, and they have to be able to reproduce the filing that was sent to the SEC from a long time ago. So they're going to have to retain copies of that material or a backup of that data from that period in time. At some point in time, a system may be retired. And part of it could be, as we're maintaining the system, we're realizing that maybe the number of bug fixes are increasing, or there's been other issues that have been occurring, or it could just be that the maintenance costs are too much and we want to basically start over again. That could be one reason to retire a system. Another might be it's not that we're necessarily retiring the system, but we're going to retire the technology. And so maybe we're going to bring in a new mainframe that has faster processors, that has a different storage mechanism, and we're really going to take the system functioning as is, but bring it onto this new technology. But in the process of doing that, we're retiring the old system. So there could be some other reasons why that happens, but at some point in time, it may be identified that a system is going to retire. And then the future. So, well, one of the futures would have to do with technology changing. So as increases in speed of things like hard drive, increases in speed of processors, having to upgrade systems along the way. But I think other things that what the future has is fear of things like cybercrime, securing systems. And sometimes we don't have a security policy in place because we're not aware that there's an issue until somewhere it happens. And they said, oh, wait a minute, we got to protect against that and go and deal with that to put that restriction in place, or a security measure in place. I'm losing it here at the end. Yeah, it's about normal for me for a lecture. Okay, that's good enough.